Welcome to episode number 370 of the Genuine ScLoHo Media and Marketing Podcast. My name is Scott Howard, also known as ScLoHo. This is an ongoing collection of media, marketing, and personal insights with a fresh update nearly every week since 2017. This is the audio reading of an article that you can read at my website, scotthoward.me. Altogether, I published over 1,600 articles, and this one is titled The 2025 Fort Wayne Radio Rating Update. And even though I'm recording this at the Federated Media Studios in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and I work for WOWO Radio, and this is being promoted by my employer, everything that I say or write is strictly my own thoughts, and not necessarily the opinions of Federated Media or any of their affiliations and or advertisers. As a follow-up to last week's article and podcast episode, today I'm going to share information regarding the latest ratings that we have for the Fort Wayne, Indiana market pertaining to radio station listenership. This data was collected last fall and is the most recent information we have until an update is released later this year. Radio stations and ad agencies pay Nielsen for the data, and I'm limited in what I can share publicly, but my goal is to give you some insight that will either confirm your perceptions or blow them out of the water. I have to bounce around a couple different survey data sets, but all of this is specifically about radio listenership in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Using the total survey area, which includes 19 counties in northeast Indiana and a few of northwest Ohio, I see that there are a little over 900,000 people ages 12 and older living here. Over a third of them live specifically in Allen County, which includes the city of Fort Wayne. If I eliminate the 12 to 17-year-olds, we have almost 570,000 adults in our area. Out of that number, 70% listen to a local radio station every week. Less than 20% listen to satellite radio like Sirius XM. Does that surprise you? Only 20%? Only 61% are watching one of the traditional broadcast TV channels of ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox networks. And less than 20% are subscribing to our local daily newspaper, the Journal-Gazette. This tells us that local radio stations still have the largest overall audience of whether you call them readers, viewers, or listeners, compared to all other local media options. Let me say that again. Local radio stations still have the largest overall audience of readers, viewers, and listeners compared to other local media options. Also, the perception that everyone listens to satellite radio is far from true, right? So, which Fort Wayne radio stations have the most listeners? In the latest rating period, just one station, WMEE, had over 100,000 weekly listeners ages 12 and older. WMEE is owned by Federated Media, where I work. Other Federated Media stations were in the top 10 in this classification include News Talk, WOWO, which is my home station, Country Station K105, and Rock Station 98.9 The Bear. Rounding out the other 6 stations with the most weekly listeners ages 12 and older, they include WBCL, WAJI, WJFX, WLDE, WXKE, and WBTU. Altogether, 29 stations made the entire survey. What I just listed were the top 10. From a business perspective, using the broad range of ages 12 and older doesn't make sense because teenagers are not spending much money compared to adults. And to really take an honest look at who spends money, we should also leave out the young adults in their 20s, maybe even up to age 35 or 40. It's not that these age demographics don't have money, but most of it is already spoken for with college debts or rent or car payments and credit card debt eating up most of those paychecks when you're that age. Realistically, it's when we are in our 30s that our families are growing, both in number and expenses. However, by the time adults reach around 40, they begin to have some breathing room, or at least figured out how to deal with their finances on a more grown-up level. That's why when I talk to business owners, I use the term grown-ups as their customers. These are people age 35 and older. Sometimes business owners are targeting grown-ups age 45 and older because that's who will spend money more freely instead of the younger folks. I give you all of that just to set you up from what I've been doing for years when it comes to rating data for the purposes of advertising. And that is to look at the age demographics of each radio station that matches who will buy what a business is selling. That age, like I said, is usually the older adults or grown-ups. It starts with age 35. My station, WOWO Radio, has the most weekly listeners in that age group of 35 and older. Another important number that I look at from the ratings is how much time do listeners spend listening to their favorite radio stations. It's called time spent listening, or TSL. And again, WOWO Radio dominates over all the other local radio stations. From a business perspective, that means there is an increased likelihood that a WOWO listener will hear your ad compared to listeners of any other radio station. Now, because, like I said, our radio station company subscribes to Nielsen, I have a cool dashboard from Nielsen, and one of the tools on that dashboard is where I can plug in a sample schedule on WOWO of, let's say, 15 ads per week, and it will tell me that on other radio stations how many commercials I need to be playing in order to reach the same number of people with the same amount of frequency. When I plug that data in, it said I needed at least 30 ads, up to 45 ads, to reach the same number of people, the same number of times as if I just ran 15 ads per week on WOWO. Now, you can talk to me about this specifically for your business, and I can run reports specifically for you too. While all this is good news for the people that I talk with about inviting WOWO listeners to become your customers, I basically think of it as reassurance data. Now, coming up in a couple of weeks, I'll be sharing my simple formula on how to buy advertising that doesn't involve ratings or anything other than common sense. And I'll show you how you can use it to be smarter than most advertising salespeople. In the meantime, do you have any questions about advertising and marketing that you don't know who to ask? You can ask me, Scott Howard. Email me, scott@wowo.com. That's scott@wowo.com.
Podcasts by Federated Media.